Hello students! Welcome to this special video lesson designed by Rishi Sir. Today we're going to dive into an excerpt from one of the most famous diaries ever written. We're going to explore a side of Anne Frank that is so witty, so clever, and you know what? Incredibly relatable. Let's start with this one line that is really at the heart of this chapter and frankly her entire diary. She writes, "Paper has more patience than people."
That feeling is so real, no? How sometimes you can be surrounded by so many people but still feel like there's no one you can actually truly talk to. It's that whole feeling of being lonely in a crowd.
Exactly. And that deep need for a true friend, someone she could just pour her heart out to without any judgment, well, that's what leads her to start writing in the first place. For her, it isn't just a book. She gives it a name, Kitty, and decides that this diary will be her one true friend.
So let's explore this first big idea. Why did this diary, this friend she called Kitty, become so completely essential for her?
But that's the strange part, isn't it? She had a loving family, a sister, and something like 30 friends. How can you have so many people in your life and still feel like you don't have a single true friend, yaar?
See, that's the whole point. She explains that there's a huge difference between just having people around you and having someone you can really truly confide in. With her friends, all the conversations were about, well, ordinary everyday things. She really needed a space to get all her real thoughts and feelings out. And Kitty became that safe space for her.
Now this need to express herself didn't just stay inside the diary. Oh no, it spilled over into her daily life. And that brings us to the main story in this chapter. A really funny little conflict she has in her classroom with her maths teacher, a Mr. Keesing.
So the problem is actually pretty simple. Mr. Keesing, who Anne cheekily calls an old fogey, is just annoyed because she talks way too much in his class. He thinks it's a huge disruption.
But her argument is just brilliant. She says talking is a student's trait. And better yet, she inherited it from her mother, so what can she possibly do about it? So clever.
It is clever, right? But Mr. Keesing, well, he wasn't convinced that easily. So his solution was to give her a pretty unusual punishment, extra homework, in the form of essays.
And we're not talking about just any essays. The punishments just kept escalating. First, he made her write an essay on a chatterbox, but she kept talking, so he assigned another one, an incorrigible chatterbox. And that third one is just too funny. "Quack, quack, quack," said Mistress Chatterbox. At this point, you can tell the teacher was just trying to make fun of her in front of the whole class. He was really trying to corner her, y'all.
He absolutely was. But with that third essay, Anne decided, okay, if Mr. Keesing wants a joke, I'll give him a joke. But she was going to make sure that the joke was actually on him.
So, with a little help from her friend San, she writes a poem instead of an essay. It tells the story of a father swan who bites his 3 baby ducklings to death for a simple reason, because they quacked too much.
Wow, that's genius. She's basically holding up a mirror to him, right? Suggesting that the father swan, Mr. Keesing, is being totally ridiculous for punishing ducklings just for being ducklings. She turned his own joke right back at him, but in such a smart way, he couldn't even get mad.
And you know what? It worked. It worked perfectly. Mr. Keesing took the joke in exactly the right spirit. In fact, he loved it so much that he read the poem out loud, not just to Anne's class, but to other classes as well. And after that day, he let her talk and even started making a few jokes in class himself. Her wit completely won him over.
So, this brings us to our takeaway zone. Let's take a minute to break down some of the key themes and literary devices from this story that really give it so much meaning.
For me, I think the biggest theme is just how universal all these teenage feelings are. You know, feeling misunderstood, needing a real friend, even having these funny little problems with teachers. It's something everyone goes through, no?
Absolutely. And that leads right into our second theme, the incredible power of wit and humor. See, Anne didn't get angry or defiant. She used her intelligence to solve the problem in a creative way. And that all connects to the third, and maybe the most important theme here, that deep human need for self-expression. It's the whole reason she started her diary.
Okay, now for a few literary devices. First up is the word anecdote. It sounds a bit fancy, but it just means a short, interesting story about a real incident. This whole story about Mr. Keesing, it's a perfect anecdote from Anne's school life. It's a little snapshot that tells us so much about her character.
Next, let's talk about irony. Irony is just when the result of a situation is the complete opposite of what you expected, usually in a funny way. In this case, Mr. Keesing's punishment was meant to silence Anne, but it ended up causing her to produce her most creative and celebrated piece of writing.
See, the joke really was on him in the end, yeah.
And finally, a really important one, metaphor. A metaphor is when you describe something by saying it is something else, just to give it a deeper meaning. So when Anne says she wants her diary to be her friend, and she calls that friend Kitty, she's using the diary as a powerful metaphor for the true friendship she was looking for.
So, we'll leave you with a final thought to reflect on. In a tough situation, how can using your wit and your creativity actually be a much more powerful tool than just getting angry?
That's a great question, and Anne's story is the perfect example. Cello, done and dusted. Hopefully this makes the chapter all so much clearer. Best of luck, guys.